Wow, what can I say? Let me thank all of you for being here. You've been patient, you've endured the sun, but you've waited. You've waited, you know, and I am just so thankful. Grandpa Posse, are you here? Grandpa? Yeah, I love this, I love this. It's good to have you. It's really great to have you. Mont John, Rivier Cyric, Montfreal, Montfregat. Beautiful, beautiful. Barry! Yeah, I need to feel you. It is so good to be here tonight. You know, we are just emerging from a very difficult time in our political history. For the first time in the history of our 34 years, we decided not to participate in an election that we were certain would be fraudulent and rigged based on our past experiences. So we thank you, our supporters, for heeding the call that has now been heard across the world. For the first time, governments, organizations, and people across the globe are taking notice of what is going on in Dominica. They are witnessing an administration bent on destroying its opposition and on staying in office at all costs. They are seeing a prime minister who promises one thing on election reform and does another. It is clear that this country of ours cannot continue to go down that path. And our stand on 6 December, and to use the word of US President Roosevelt, on a day that will go down in infamy, is to stand our ground, to not give up, but rather to keep pushing until that day when there are free and fair elections in Dominica. In the past several days, our party met with observers from the OAS, from CARICOM, and from the Commonwealth Secretariat. We laid out our case why our elections are tainted and why as a party we could not participate. We described the bloated voters list with over 75,000 people in a population of 72,000. We described all the cocoa macaque, for example, the widespread bribery and cheating of past elections. We described the lack of access to DBS radio and a court system that is clearly biased against the opposition, and where it was clear that we would never get any redress. Here is what our highest court, the CCJ, had to say when it got a chance to finally look at the cautioning, and that's why I call it cautioning. It's nonsense really taking place in Dominica. And this was following the 2019 elections, petitions that were filed by Glenroy Coffey, Oswald George, and Anthony Robin against Melissa Skerritt et al., in which they challenged the legality of the election of several DLP candidates. And I quote the court, quote, the court found that the petitions before the judge were not determined on their merits. They were determined at an intermediate stage before the taking of evidence and before the judge rendered any determination on whether any person was or was not validly elected as a representative. Did you hear what I just read? A High Court judge decided before hearing any evidence that there was no evidence to consider. Imagine you are charged and you go before a court and the court says, I don't want to hear you, forget the evidence, forget the fingerprints, forget this, forget the other. And that is what the court was saying. They held this High Court judge to account. And so what happened was we actually lost on a technicality. It was not because we did not have the evidence. And let me continue with what the judge says, what the CCD says. It says that the judge, at this time Judge Glasgow, he failed the people of Dominica by not listening to the evidence and making a determination on the strength of that evidence. It was that technicality which prevented the 2019 elections from being overturned. according to the CCJ, because the High Court judge did not hear the case on its merits, his decision could not be final, and therefore the Court of Appeal was right in not taking up the appeal. Let me explain that to you. What the court said was, because he did not follow through on the case, it meant that the case was not final, and you can only appeal a final judgment. And the judge knew that. He knew that. He must have known. He must have known that if you don't have a final judgment, the appeals court cannot hear it. So when it was taken to the appeals court, they said, well, we are sorry, there's nothing we can do. But the CCJ thought that they were also in error. The CCJ told the appeals court that on this critical matter that went to the heart of democracy in Dominica, you were supposed to have listened on constitutional grounds. So that is the issue that we have, and that's why we said we cannot win because they'll bring the people down. We go to court, the court brushes aside. So we said we're not taking part. No paka puepa, no pasa. Let me quote one more quote, in fact 2 more quotes from the CCJ. And if you have a chance, you need to read the CCJ decision. It says, and I quote, striking out pleadings altogether could deprive a petitioner entirely of the right to a trial. A judge should therefore very sparingly adopt such a draconian measure. Indeed, the judge is in no position to decide at this stage the merits of a contested case, nor should the judge strike out pleadings if there are enough facts pleaded that, if established, would show that the elections were a sham or that a different result would have been declared, and the respondents have a reasonable appreciation of the evidence with which they would be faced at trial. In other words, the judge was saying, or the CCJ is saying, that if they had behaved as a proper court would have behaved, that they should have in fact listened to the evidence, because it was quite possible that it would have shown, because they saw the evidence, the CCJ saw the evidence, and they said, based on what they have seen, it is possible that the court would have decided that this 2019 elections were a sham. They went on to say, and I'm taking time on this because that's very important, because we have heard people say, well, why did you not take part? Well, here is the reason. I'm giving it to you tonight. There can be no doubt that this particular decision by the Court of Appeal conclusively preempted any further inquiry into arguably unlawful conduct by the election authorities that potentially went to the root of free and fair elections. Papa Bonte, Magrisa. Do you hear what I'm saying? Hear what I'm reading? You hear what the CCJ is saying? That by the behavior of this judge, the hands of the appeals court were tied, but what it did in the end, it prevented the petitioners, it prevented Soso Kofi and the others from getting redress, and potentially, and he said potentially went to the very root of free and fair elections in Dominica. You know, I've heard endless criticism of the opposition, but this is what we're up against. A court system that was clearly biased against us. Completely biased. We had the evidence. We had the list of persons who came down illegally. We had the list of dead persons voting. In most countries, the conduct of the 2019 election, any court worth its salt would have overturned those results. But not so in Dominica. And you expect us to keep on fighting a losing battle? Hell no, we will not. The electoral office failed us. The High Court failed us. The appeals court failed us. And you're asking us to go back to this? As my friend would say, no way. But let me remind you, Dominica, that our cause is just. Our fight is the right one. and we shall overcome. You know what? At the end of the day, the observers who heard us, you must have seen an initial OAS report that laments the fact that none of its 51 recommendations given in the past have been implemented. The report notes, and I want every Dominican to listen to this from the OAS. It says, nobody they talk about free and fair elections. That is nowhere in the report. Nothing about elections being free and fair. But what they did say was this, and I quote, "It is clear that Dominica cannot proceed to another election under the current rules. It will therefore be essential to have a new electoral framework in place before the next poll. Recognizing that the best time to implement electoral reform is immediately after an election, the mission encourages the authorities of Dominica to proceed with the planned consultations and legislative changes now to ensure there is sufficient time to fully implement all the necessary changes." And that is what we are asking for. We will continue to pursue electoral reform, and will continue to demand that as soon as those reforms are completed, and no later than the first quarter of 2024, that we have new elections in Dominica. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on this other issue. That is something we'll come to later. But another important part of the report of the OAS, they said this. They said that they had observers in every polling district. And look at the quote that they gave. The mission saw very few lines, and in many cases, very few voters at the locations members observed throughout the day. Very few lines, very few voters, yet you have almost half of those who voted in 2019 voting. Now think about it. If in 2019 you had these lines, if you have half as much, you should have at least these lines, right? But they said they saw no lines. You observed it? Were there any lines? Yes, we got 20,000, but that's something for another time. We'll come back to this issue. Dominicans, the journey on which we have embarked will neither be easy nor swift. At every stage, we will need to battle our political opponents and fight hard for what we need to accomplish. We will need to battle for electoral reform in order to fix our broken system of elections. We will need to battle within our legal system. We will need to battle for our many supporters who have been cast aside simply because they have thrown their support behind our party. Above all, we will need to battle for the hearts and minds of all Dominica in order to restore good and honest government. On electoral reform, and I'm going to stay there for a little while, we will never compromise. We either get it or we take it. We will hold the Prime Minister on his word. Not that we expect him to be any different from what happened. We heard him in 2019. Oh, electoral reform in 100 days. So that is Byron, blah, blah, blah. What happened? He called an election with 2.5 years. However, given the behavior of the Prime Minister, we must be prepared to fight and to fight hard for electoral reform. There may come a time in the not too distant future when we will have to call upon you to take to the streets in mass protests. I'll repeat this. There may come a time in the not too distant future, if we do not get electoral reform, that to take it, we will have to take to the streets. We, in the leadership of the party, we are prepared to lead that fight. But you must be prepared to join in. This fight, ladies and gentlemen, has to do with our survival as a democratic country and that of our party. We can have the best set of plans, the best economists, the best planners, the best thinkers in Dominica, but all of that will come to naught if you're not able to get into government. And to get into government, we need electoral reform. Now let's talk a little bit about the legal situation of the party. I wish to remind all of us here tonight that no less than 8 members of the United Workers' Party have since 2017 been brought before the courts by the government of Dominica on various charges including incitement and treason at tremendous financial and other costs to the Dominican public and to us. These members are trustee and founding member Mr. Edison James, former Prime Minister of Dominica, the leader of the opposition in the past parliament, Honorable Lennox Linton, Honorable Hector John, the MP for Bowie, for the Salisbury constituency, Monrachet and Kulibistre, Honorable Danny Lugay, the former MP of the Rosenhof constituency, Mr. Nicholas George, the UWP Secretary General, Dr. Sam Christian, the UWP candidate in the 2019 election, Mr. Brian Linton, and myself, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, the political leader of the United Workers' Party. Not only was the charge brought before me, but I spent 2 days in the jails in Dominica. Actually, no, 2 days and 3 nights. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. 3 nights. 3 nights drinking juice. No, not juice, Kool-Aid, and bread and butter. But you know, without even a bench to sit on. So I sat on the cell talking to the guys around. And I remember one time probably about 3 o'clock in the night, there is a huge hole in the Polish cell, you know, to allow air to come in, all right, on the ground. Then I just saw a shadow, you know, a shadow just came across this hole, and I said, what is that? Moi voyons Pétan what? For a while I thought it was a chihuahua. That's some of the At that point, I was sitting on my shoes. So I said, you know what, I might fall asleep, and that might come and hit my toes. So let me put my shoes back. So just in case I fell asleep. Ladies and gentlemen, this is serious. Because in addition to us in the opposition, a number of people right here in Salisbury, this very proud village of Salisbury, are before the courts. This is a village, Bowie, that has suffered long, has been brutalized by this regime. They have been tear gassed and fired upon. 2 of the young persons shot. And we've had tear gas not once, but 4 times. A proud farming community that has been pushed to the edge of despair by a government simply refusing to repair its feeder roads and relegating many who depend upon farming to poverty. These charges must be viewed as largely frivolous and meant to intimidate the opposition and to stifle the dissent within the good people of Salisbury. I therefore tonight, right here in Salisbury, call on the government of Dominica to drop all of the charges against the people of Salisbury. Get rid of them, make them disappear, and as you did in the election case, nullify them. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt, end your war on the people of Salisbury and on the United Workers' Party. Prime Minister Skerritt, rebuild the feeder roads for the people of Salisbury. And above all, Prime Minister Skerritt, apologize to the people of Salisbury and compensate them. Compensate them for their loss, for their pain, and their suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, the party that I lead, the United Workers' Party, is committed to expanding its appeal and attracting the support of the Dominican public. Now is the time to grow our party. Now is the time to appeal to the young and the old and the middle-aged to come on board and to help us build, because we are building for the future. To help us in doing this, we will soon launch what we call the All Doors campaign. In the coming days and months, we will visit every town, every village, every corner of this country. We will meet with the businessmen, employees, workers, farmers, housewives, police officers, school children, teachers, nurses, and any and everyone as we outline our plans and the vision for the future of Dominica. It is a vision that seeks to build and not to break down, to uplift and not to tear down, to unify and not to divide. Above all, it's a vision to improve the lives and well-being of our people, to create jobs, to revive our economy, to restart our agriculture sector, to send our farmers back to the fields, to create wealth in particular for the young people, and to rebuild a strong middle class. We will seek to win hearts and minds, not necessarily by what we say, but by what we do. Ladies and gentlemen, people of Dominica, I continue to be concerned about the welfare and the well-being of our thousands of supporters across Dominica. I'm disturbed about reports of discrimination, denial of job opportunities, and denial of further education opportunities in particular. Last week, I met and spoke to a young professional who told me of the struggles to get gainful employment because of her affiliation to the United Workers' Party. Over 15 years of looking for a job in Dominica. Maguesa. This is criminal. It is critical, and we'll talk about this foreign invasion as well, at the expense of our Dominican people. While we cannot, as an opposition party, eliminate the discriminatory practices while in opposition, we can do something, and we will do something to help alleviate this extreme pain and suffering of our members. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to announce that number one, we will start a small business register. We are inviting all the small trade and professional individuals to register with us. We need you to tell us what is your area of service that you're able to provide, such as plumbing, electrical work, accounting, masonry, carpentry, car mechanic, landscaping, etc. We will compile those names into a business registry and make it available to our supporters across Dominica, so that when they want work done, they can look you up in this registry, call you, and offer you some work. In the months ahead, we plan to initiate various small business projects that can help to create jobs. We are working very hard on this to create jobs using various projects. Number 3, and as I did in 2016, we'll work again along with Danny Luge to get our produce on the supermarket shelves, particularly in Martinique. And let me just thank, in talking to the crowd tonight, a very good idea from someone I met earlier tonight, and I'm going to include this as number 4 in particular for young people who have been denied education opportunities. We are going to make an appeal for a special fund that we can help fund scholarships to the State College for our supporters. Now, to make these plans become a reality, and we have to make this a reality, I have already, in my capacity as the leader of the opposition, made inquiries to 2 organizations where we can source small grants financing, and we'll have more to tell you in the days ahead. We will also approach any and everyone willing to aid in this effort, including friendly governments. To many friends in the diaspora, I make a special appeal. We are not asking for a fish, but we are asking for the hook and the line and the nets that will enable us to put these projects to work, that will enable us to complete those small projects, and will enable us to provide some relief for our people. We will seek the necessary resources that will allow us to care for those less fortunate amongst us, those who simply need some help, the elderly, those in need of that extra help. And at this point, let me thank those of you that have already volunteered to speak to your friends and neighbors, to network, and to build the support systems that will allow us to raise the resources that we need. And I really want to thank the many persons who have reached out to me personally over the past 2 weeks, volunteering their support, like the 2 business people in St. Thomas who said we are prepared to use our businesses to put a group together to raise funds, the people in St. Croix who have also promised to do the same, the people in New York who are working all over the United States, in Europe and elsewhere. We are going to be calling upon Dominicans to give a lending hand to Dominicans, including those Dominicans who came to vote in 2019. We need you now to support those Dominicans that will put in such a difficult position. We are going to call upon you to dig into your resources and to help us get those resources that we can take care of our people here in Dominica. So we are not simply interested in getting money at the time of a campaign. We want to get so that we can do these things that we spoke about. Revive our agriculture, revive the markets, provide for the school children, provide for the elderly, and do other things that will create jobs for the people of Dominica. As I come to an end, ladies and gentlemen, I won't keep you long. You've been extremely patient tonight. You've stayed long. Let me appeal to Dominicans at home and overseas to join us on this journey to make Dominica a better place. And in the words of our leader, our former leader, the best place to live, to work, and to enjoy life. Let us continue to work to get past our differences. Let us not view each other as a political opponent, but view each other simply as Dominicans. Let us lend a hand to each other. Let us support each other. Let us encourage each other. And let us be there for each other. Ours, the United Workers' Party, is a big tent where no one will be turned away and where everyone is welcomed. There is a fight that must be fought, and it is bigger than any one party. So in ending, let me say, Levez Domniche, levez. À nous travail, main à main, tête à tête, and let us work together to build our beautiful country. Good night, Dominica. We love you, and God bless you.